Hello, everyone. Welcome to this keynote lecture from the Public Space Academy. My name is Luisa Bravo. I'm the founder and director of the Public Space Academy, which is an educational program promoted by City Space Architecture in partnership with the Ove Arup Foundation and in collaboration with UN Habitat. I'm here today, as usual, with Via Viese, who is a member of the team of the Public Space Academy. She is in charge of communication activities. Welcome, Via.
Hi, hello everybody, and welcome to this very exciting lecture. Hope you enjoy.
So Via will be with us, especially for the second part of the lecture, for the Q&A session. You are welcome to write your comments from where you are actually attending this lecture, which is currently streaming on our YouTube channel, our LinkedIn page, and our Twitter profile, X profile. So whenever you are, you can actually post comments and we can later take a look of all your comments and select some of the best questions that we can discuss at the very end of the presentation. So now I just want to move very quickly to our speaker. We have today with us Guillermo Bernal, a prominent leader in placemaking, recognized for his transformative local and global contributions. He serves as a board member of PlacemakingX and is the creator of the Placeman documentary, and as the founding director of the Fundación Placemaking Mexico, he has spearheaded the transformation of over 500 public spaces. Welcome, Guillermo.
Thank you, Luisa. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to share a little bit of my experience.
Yes, we are very glad to have you here because in this Keynote Lecture Series, we try to have academic thinkers, but also doers. And so today it is very important, your contribution, since it is actually trying to translate theoretical contents that we have presented also with previous scholars joining this Keynote Lecture Series into concrete action to improve public spaces. Okay, so I leave you the floor, Guillermo, and we will meet later for the Q&A.
Thank you. So I would like to start, Luisa, and everyone listening since the beginning. And I started, I almost finished 13 years ago my master's degree. And I came back in Europe. I studied in Europe, and then I came back to Mexico to start my practice. And I call like this my lecture: principles, practice, and then the global application we are doing. And I'm representing these three institutions: PlacemakingX, Fundación Placemaking Mexico, and the Place Institute, and that I will speak later about it. So this starts almost 10 years ago. No, more than 10 years ago, like almost 11 years ago. And I was taking this plane from Mexico to San Francisco when I was, and I took actually two low-cost airlines, like many of us do. And then I realized that Southwest Airlines was doing a program in public spaces where they were traveling, this airline, with placemaking. And I've been studying, and I did a training with Project for Public Space in New York. So I knew that there was a potential of having this application in Mexico. So this was the program. It was called Southwest Airlines Heart of the Community by Project for Public Spaces. And it had been implemented in all these cities in the US. But as I knew that there was the possibility of the airline coming to Mexico to do some travel, there was also the possibility of PPS and this grant to be applied in my city. So the first thing I realized was, where to apply this kind of grant and how to implement this project. And the first place I thought was the place I was walking almost every day through it. It was called the Foro Limberg. Foro Limberg is a Art Deco plaza square in the middle of a park here in the central city of Mexico. And it used to look like this, full of graffiti, and there was this challenge of safety and security around it. And basically the government was really worried about what was going on there, especially with drug dealing and yeah, and some illegal activities happening all the time there. And even in this picture, if you can see, there's like these policemen are kind of harassing 3 or 4 even like policemen coming to speak with one guy, right? Probably he was smoking some marijuana. So this was the daily basis of the Foro Limberg. But the city decided to close it up in a fence, around the fence to just program by themselves the activities as a way to not allow illegal activities to happen. So me as a young activist, we obviously criticized this effort. We went to the newspaper, and then I really believe that this grant from PPS could potentially help us do it differently. So that's exactly what we did with this grant. We start asking questions in a very lighter, quicker, cheaper way. Which kind of activities people would like to do in the square. We also ask in many different techniques of workshops um, uh, who can apply and who can do activities and how they can do them, calendarize them, and show to the government that there was another possibility of doing this in a more community way. Then we did some voting. We bring a lot of the artists to and of the community to activate the square with this grant. We did also indoor workshops. This one is called the Place Game. It's methodology from public spaces, and that been applied now globally in many communities. And then finally in 2016, the Limberg Forum was reopened, not fenced, but obviously with not a lot of activities happening. So that's when our grant start applying to do the changes. So we did festivals where a lot of activities happen, and all of these activities were made by neighbors and the community, like yoga classes, a lot of games, and a lot of activations in the sense of play, classes, walks. This is an architect from the neighborhood who wanted to speak about the heritage of the square. This is Manuel de Mime, who he's our neighbor also, and who wanted to do a show, and he was super happy to have finally the permit to do it legally there. Theater, these little boxes of theater that another company brought that is from the neighborhood, a plant clinic. This I look a little bit blurry now, but it's this a little library that we install in the square, and have some books, some pillows, some tables and chairs where people could read a book. So then we applied for a second grant from Southwest Airlines to bring some of these activities to another level. And what we realized is that some of these activities were super successful, including this library. So then we built this beautiful library that stayed there for almost a year. That it opened, and it created this environment around the forum at night. We learn a lot from our mistakes. For example, in the library, we realized that the library couldn't be a closed card, need to be an open card that people could see inside. And that's why basically we realized the library should be open and should be, we had some solar panels that could light the library at night and without actually being connected to any. It was almost 10 years ago, so very innovative for the time. And these are some of the life that happened. Besides the beautiful architecture of the library, was more about the programming and what's happening all over around this library. can see even went outside the perimeter of the library and went through the forum to do a lot of the activities. You can see here's a lot of the pictures taken. So what we learned from these years of first workshopping and then programming is that we learn, and when we program, when the program becomes collective, we transform our public spaces into really hearts of our communities. And obviously this is also part of it, and also you can bring your city into the map. So then later I took another of these low-cost planes, and then I realized that our city, my city, was showcased in the map. So this is also a really satisfying thing to show to you guys, and this is also what placemaking can do. But above the architecture and the construction of the space was this strong community that we built around the square. And we realized this September 19 of 2017, when the biggest earthquakes in 30 years happened in Mexico City. A lot of buildings and unfortunately people, we lost a lot of people in the city, and a lot of buildings around actually the park were hit. This is one of the buildings that was just in front of the park that suffered a lot of damage and losses. But suddenly we realized that the forum was not only for these activities that we program and was programmed by the community, but also by on-program activities that like these shelters and these point to bring food and resources to all the cities. So this is what happened when we program collectively. And exactly this is one of the takes I take. The benefit of these community-led public spaces obviously can be noticed in normal days, but in uncommon days, it really strengthens the connections between the community. And I had the luck to showcase this case in the new edition of the How to Turn a Place Around book of Pray for Public Spaces that I advise you as all practitioners of placemaking and public spaces to get and read. It's a very hands-on and practical handbook of applying these principles of placemaking to public spaces, written by Kathy Madden and Fred Kent, and basically to identify these 11, as I say, these 11 key elements in transforming public spaces. And this case I just told you, it's showcased in one of the principles. Fred Kent and Kathy have been mentors for me since day one, and they have showcased me the principles and also the methodology I'm gonna show you. So it's, as I say, it's 11 principles, and then I took what I learned from this experience and also these principles into applying it to different other projects I start building in the country. I learned that, and I will go faster on this, but you can stop the screens and read them in more detail. But the first principle we learn is that the community is the expert, and exactly the opportunity to identify the talents and assets in the community are key to implement the projects we're gonna do as the ones I showed you in Fort Limburg. But also, as we learn from the library, it's not only creating a beautiful design, but creating a place, creating and strengthening this sense of community and comfort image, and as well as the activities and uses that are going to happen around it. And we learn from it. Here you can see pictures of our recent work in Placemaking Mexico in different squares and parks and streets. Also, we learned that we can't do it alone, even as we as practitioners or professionals if we consider ourselves like that, we can't do it alone, and we need to really take everyone expertise and advantage to utilize as an asset to our public spaces, including obviously local institutions, museums, schools, and many others. These are pictures from, for example, this one down is from Culiacan, Mexico, when we brought early childhood children from between 5 and 6 years old to work for us for a safe pedestrian crossing in the city. The fourth principle is you can see a lot just by observing. So this is basically how different possible assets can make work something and cannot make work something else. So this is also pictures of our work around the city. We need to have a vision of it. We had a vision for Fort Limburg, and we do have vision for all our projects that we do. Also start lighter, quicker, cheaper. They say start with the petunias, but basically what this means is start with the easiest things, with experiments in short term, improve them, and then refine them over years. And this is exactly what happened with our library and what happened with our right now tactical urbanism that had been then taken to other levels of construction. We use a term called triangulation, and this is basically the process of connecting and linking between people that maybe they will not speak with each other. This is a concept from Holly White, and this is key for us to connect different people that potentially will not speak together. And this is a picture in Monterrey of that. We had like many other places in the world, but we have a lot of migration happening from the Caribbean through Mexico to go to the United States, and Monterrey has been a spot where a lot of them have stopped, but they have also start building families, and how can we connect them through public space. So it's also what we are doing right now. Another principle, the eighth principle, is that it can't be. Always people say it can't be done. There's always this negativity around our work, but we really believe that good public spaces, it's inevitable that we will encounter obstacles, but create a place is so satisfying at the end, like for example what I explained you with the Limber Forum. Form always support the function. Also, and we can go deeply on this one, but money is never the issue, because always the gains of what we do will be bigger and longer term than actually what we are doing in short term. So and this brings to the last principle, that is that we are never finished. So our if we can see it as tactical urbanism, is just the beginning of the long-term improvements, as we have seen in so many of our projects that I will show you. The other tool we use a lot is how to measure and identify the qualities of our public spaces, and this was delivered also by Public for Public Spaces and work by Steve Davis, a great friend and colleague right now. He mapped this diagram. He called it the place diagram. And other friends have called it the compass, because it really brings you a compass on where you are right now and what's missing on your public spaces. And the compass is basically divided in four attributes, and then it has intangible attributes, and then KPIs, indicators that can help you measure. You can all look at this and at the website of Public Spaces for more detail, but also in the book How to Turn a Place Around. It speaks obviously about access and linkages, connections with the surrounding, how easy it is to get from one place to another, and how convenient it is to connection with public transit or public spaces. The other attribute is comfort and image. Obviously, had to have a good image and be comfortable, but also be safe, clean, and a lot of places available to sit. This is a square we did in Mexico City, and first we start with tactical urbanism, and then we finish with this square you can see here in the picture. But also, and as a third element, the uses and activities. We realize that a good public space should have a lot of reasons for people to visit in the first place, and then a lot of reasons for them to continue to return to the public space. And also making it unique. Places special and unique are also key to people to realize that they can travel to there as a great spot. And the last one of the attributes we think will really bring everything together is this sociability. So how to feel comfortable, how this place feels comfortable with the interaction with the strangers, as I say, with this concept of triangulation, and how they feel stronger as a sense of place and attachment to the community. How can we build this rather than the physical and the connecting part, but also the, let's say, the metaphysical part of the public space. And then we realized that these 4 attributes really align perfectly with a lot of the SDGs of the partners of this lecture, UN Habitat. So building good public spaces not only support the 11, no, like it's obvious, the sustainable communities, but support a lot of the other elements of the SDGs. So through public space, we can achieve our big term goals as a community. And then really, I believe that public space is the vehicle for doing the transformations. And another one that it's a wonderful technique for let's say planning public spaces is the power of 10. The power of 10 is a concept that Fred Kent worked 3 decades ago in New York City, and he says it's basically for me a way of disaggregating our efforts into a human scale perspective. So what he says is if we take a city and we map it as regions, and then we map those regions into destinations, and then we take those destinations and put it into places. At the end, we will not only have 10 great major destinations to visit in the city, but we will have 10 plus 10 plus 10 different things to do. And if these things to do are layered into a system of synergy, will create a fantastic activities and activation of our city rather than one single element. So here you can see the classic example of New York City, where you can take obviously the regions, but then you take the destinations, and as this picture of Bryant Park as one of the first projects that Fred and Project for Public Spaces did, and then took them into different activities that can happen in the square. So it's basically a disaggregation of activities, and it's very challenging also to do it in a big scale, but it's so satisfying because it really brings a lot of the potential of doing this. Here's, for example, an example from Project for Public Spaces in Harvard University Plaza that it really aligned when I was with them working. So I really remember this place. But also we have done this, for example, in Fort Limburg, how we map different activities and how these different activities could align rather than one single activity happening at the same time. So if you want to see more about Fred, Kathy, and Steve, and about the beginning of Project for Public Spaces, I just filmed a movie of a short documentary movie of 19 minutes. You can watch it in theplacement.org or in this QR, so you can see more about the story about placemaking and how they started this movement in the 60s. And one of the new tools we are using right now in Placemaking Mexico is one delivered by Peter Smith from Australia, and board member and the chair of board member of PlacemakingX. And he explains that a space becomes a place when it generates capital for the community, and he calls it place capital, and basically as the value that the place holds for its users. And he divided into 5 different capitals. He had a new one in his new intervention. He also had the political capital as an element around this. But in his first paper, he writes about this: environmental, social, physical, economic, and cultural capital that create this value for place. Obviously, the physical capital, as we say, is this attractiveness, accessibility, comfort, safety, the connectivity of the square. Obviously, the connections, the physical construction of the public space it's key for it to work, but it's not the only one. And this is exactly where a lot of my colleagues I've seen have failed, and we have failed together when we only focus on this part of the equation to deliver a public space. Obviously, the environmental capital of a public space it's very relevant, but not only as environmental sustainability, but also the awareness and participation, everything around the environment that creates this. Here's, like, for example, a family in Monterrey that is in Mexico that is just helping us plant and in a park. The economic capital it's very relevant as enterprises can emerge, vendors, and also the accessibility from these public spaces to our businesses. The cultural capital, but not only as a faraway way of seeing culture, but as an expression of the urban life and the innovation and the creativity of artists that are part of the community. The sense of belonging and importance of place it's absolutely crucial to our public spaces. And obviously the social capital, the community leadership, as these people you can see here in the pictures, volunteers, and also the inclusion, well-being, and resiliency of the places that can be measured in a more metaphysical way. But this is key to do the process. So he takes these elements of place capital, and he first do an evaluation of the public space. Then he divides it into two different elements: the plan book, that it's basically the site vision and future identity of the place, and then the place book, that is the evaluation of the space. And then he continue do this in a continuous way in different times to see the success, like as the 11 principle of how to turn a place around, that the work is never finished. So here is basically the planning process. It's about doing an audit, doing a capital data, mapping the local knowledge, then bringing these three elements together to create a place identity framework, and from that place identity really create this mapping of place leadership around the square. And this is like the first step of the process, the what I say, the evaluation of the public space. And then from there we create a place plan, and this place plan is basically a plan of months of construction, but also activation of the squares. And it starts first with the activation, events, promotion, and the attachment and identity that it's done by in a long term. But also we start testing temporal public infrastructure. We facilitate private sector investment, as the one you can see in that we did and we have done in Mexico. You will see later. In more detail, we test deregulation through pilots, and then we facilitate local place leaderships. But this is not the end of our placemaking plan. Our plan is to create permanent public infrastructure, to obviously incentivize private sector investment into our public spaces, really create permanent regulation and deregulation of around our spaces, and create these models and resources to local place management. And this is exactly what we are really getting too deep into our models right now. But then we do exactly the same, or the same questions that we do, but in a future tense, to evaluate our public spaces, and we continue doing it. And here I wrote you some of the questions we do in the Placebook delivered by Peter Smith. Obviously, basically, it's very simple. It's with the why, what, how, who, what with, and how well we do it. And as you see here, we evaluate the capital, the context, the values, the usage and identities, the governance, and the management. You can going too deep in this if you stop this recording to read all the questions we do. And in our plan also, we answer all these questions, these 6 different parts, the same questions, but in a more strategic planning way. So we do this basically, and we use these tools as if I can remember, the 11 principles, the place game, including the place diagram, that it becomes the place game as the tool of application, the power of 10 to apply our projects, and then the place book of Peter Smith to implement our projects in Mexico. So I started my practice in 2013 with a small NGO, and in 2019 we transformed it to a foundation, and we call it Placemaking Mexico Foundation. It's basically a public charity of Mexico, and we have our influence in public spaces in Mexico, Latin America, and Spanish-speaking communities in the United States. And our mission is to empower communities to lead their own development by creating places. What we do basically 4 things. We do open calls for community-driven initiatives to improve their public spaces. We deliver technical assistance and specialized support for developing and enhancing these community places. We do, and we, as a foundation and a public charity, we receive in-kind donations, and we give them back to the community as material resources to support community projects. And the 4th, that is our main program, is we create corporate social responsibility programs that partners with communities to develop, as I say, social responsibility programs to benefit local communities, as the one I learned from more than 10 years ago from Private Public Spaces and Southwest Airlines. We do this with many companies in Mexico. So I'm gonna go through some of the programs we do. So with this Latin American company, Ternium, and this Coca-Cola, we start in July 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, in the beginning of the middle of the pandemic of the first wave. We start this program called Economic and Social Recovery Program to dynamize communities all around the country. Obviously, always hands in hand with the community. Then we achieve inclusive, resilient, and sustainable public spaces all around the country in our 32 different states in Mexico. So all over the country, we apply this program. Here's some of the pictures of what we did. Obviously, everything from our learning from our first work in Mexico City, but now we do it in all the states and all the country. At this beautiful park in Playas de Tijuana, where we brought a school that was close to it of kids with disabilities to really create their square with them. The second program we do, and this is our key program right now, is the Friendly Places for Early Childhood. We call it LAPIS. We have developed this program. We have developed 54 LAPIS in the last 3 years, and we are going to do 24 more this year. And we have done it in Mexico and also in 5 different countries in Latin America. And the idea is to focus on children aged 0 to 6, where they can play, imagine, and socialize and develop. And this group of the society for us is key, because it's where a lot of the biggest mental and connections and brain connections are happen. So when we target this group with these values of participation and inclusion, it's become really stronger in the long term. So here's some of the pictures we've done in Mexico. This in your right or in your left, I don't know. The one looks like in sand. It's in Peru. So we developed this kind of spaces in hand with the community. Or this one, that is one of my favorites, is inside a school in Chiapas, in the south of Mexico, just border with Guatemala, and how to bring kids into creating these playgrounds and places together with them. Another program we do in the foundation, it's called Backing International Small Restaurants. We are one of 5 cities that apply this program, and it's basically to help restaurants in the country to develop community linkage. And so it's not only about public spaces, but these private public spaces as restaurants and cafeterias and bars that can be supported. So we do it in partnership with American Express. So here's the people that we have supported in the last 2 years, and it's coming another edition closing in some weeks. And one great example is, for example, this one of Adriana. She owns this cochinita, tacos of cochinita. It's a specialty of tacos in Mexico, but it's a business run by her, and it becomes a safe spot for women in the city. She only works with Uber delivery women to do their deliveries, and all their products and their production are for women. So for me, it's a great example of the support we can do in different areas. It obviously becomes public space, but it's also about a longer and bigger approach to what we do. The other program, and it's related to the strategy of the Power of 10. We do this community relations program with different big industries, and what we do is that we do welcoming atmospheres and collaboration with the community in these different contexts around factories and industrial sites. So basically, we map around their site different actions to do by the community with this Power of 10 activity, and to develop these kind of squares around their industry. Especially now in Mexico and in a lot of developing countries, but here in my country, where nearshoring and a lot of new industries it's coming to the towns, it's just relevant that the actions that happen around these industries are close to the community and are not disconnected, and it's not just a big factory that just arrived to a town. Here you can see, like, obviously creating sidewalks, that it's relevant, it's crucial, because there's no, around this industrial site, there's no sidewalks, but also creating these places to sit, shadow, places to eat, for us is really relevant. And also we have this great program of courts, where we bring this we did in the FIFA World Cup last year, and we would like to do it this year again with another donor, and it's basically to bring this intergenerational coexistence in restoring and creating courts, and with the focus on urban health and doing physical activities. So here you can see some of our designs. These designs are done by workshops with the community, and then they are activated with them. Like this one here in Iztapalapa, one of the most populated municipalities globally, and with a lot of inequalities that happen. And this is one of the courts we did, and I remember this little kid that he's really a talent, and better than any older person I know playing basketball, for instance. And we can do this without our big Mexican placemaking network. We are actually a small office in Mexico City, but we all do this with collaborations with public-private organizations and other foundations as well that support our work. And our work is only possible because we partner with them to implement these actions. So in 10 years, we have, as I say, we have over 500 communities that have been benefited by our work. Everything starting by Foralimber, but then it's like just exponentially went through other areas of the country. And this is what takes me to the last part of my presentation now, where I explain you about PlacemakingX. PlacemakingX is the new evolution, let's say, of the work done through placemaking in the last 50 years. and it's basically a network of collective impact. And this is, as I learned, that it's about doing it collectively as a network rather than a single individual and a single organization leading everything. It's more about how to make it in a network, as our causes, it's so big and so huge, and now we are more than 20 different networks globally that work with this methodology and would work as a collective effort. And last year we gathered 150 placemaking leaders in Mexico City, and we focus on strategies and future of public spaces. We realized that we needed to focus on the doing of we work very hard on developing the network, but now we are working on these strategies on how actually to implement this agenda. So what we did is we brought, like I said, people from 68 different cities, and what we did is develop agendas, 42 different agendas, categorized in 4 main themes: people, outcomes, spaces, and strategies to implement them. So for outcomes, we focus on democracy, public health, attachment, local food economy, safety and security, equity and inclusion, climate, economy, development and innovation, tourism, and joy, happiness as an agenda for outcomes that we all want to achieve in our world. But also with who, and we realize that we need to focus on also different categories of people. So obviously with children, with youth, children as the LAPIS program, youth as the core program, also for the on-house, placemaking with nature, women as a big focus, placemaking for elderly as our great work of our network in Costa Rica by Andrea. She's doing a fantastic job with that. Indigenous placemaking, refugee placemaking, especially this subject in the US with Black placemaking and Latino placemaking, and all the fantastic work also done by great people like Robin and Wes with the LGBTQ plus people. But then we said where we can do this, and we also believe that there's many kinds of spaces that can be do this. Could be done in public buildings also as public spaces in the winter, that a lot of Canadian and Nordic colleagues have bring this issue to us, in suburban planning, in markets, as the great work of Steve and Kelly and many others with public markets, waterfronts as the work of Ramon, streets as places, as well as in part of tactical urbanism strategies, mobility, urban parks, architecture of place, sports facilities, and rural placemaking. So this is our agendas for spaces, and then the how to do it. And we've been working on, obviously, new strategies as digital placemaking, amenities, lighter, quicker, cheaper, creative placemaking, place-led development, like the work done in by Placemaking Europe, and then the placemaking tools and processes that I already explained you, to go deeper on those and develop new ones. The work done by Luisa and Emily Silverman with placemaking and academia and research. The philanthropy for placemaking, a lot of the work I'm doing in Mexico, financing placemaking, a lot of work also by Ryan Smolar in Placemaking US, and place governance with our people in New York and in Australia as well, and in Europe also. So basically what we said is that to implement a good program, what we need to do is connect these 4 elements. So bring a group of people or different groups of people, but think on people, and then, for example, women, and then bring a public space, a specific public place like markets, and then think of a strategy as could be digital placemaking, and then thought of outcomes that can be measured to develop these programs. And this is basically what the heart of the community, starting with project for public spaces, and now our work in Placemaking Mexico and Latin America have developed with programs. So here's if you go inside the PlacemakingX website, especially in placemaking.summit.org, you can look the 42 different agendas that we developed last year. With it is a work in progress, but what we have developed and we're still working on them. So it's basically divided in 6 elements: leaders that are working on it, challenges and opportunities for the agenda, the learning tools existing with links to different learning strategies for each of the agendas, and then the advocacy and communication campaigns that happen. So it's learning, advocacy, and then action, existing cases that exist around these agendas. And the big question on all the agendas that now I'm going to explain to you is the finance and implementing of the stakeholders. So we really believe that we have a huge framework around placemaking and about our global efforts to implement actions with our learning and advocacy strategies. But then obviously this key element of finance is what it's missing. And we have seen that developing programs with in Latin America and Mexico can lead us to where we can go globally. So what we decided is to start and to refocus this into a new institute that could not only that can create places, and more than just what I said, like these physical spaces, there are these really hubs for social and interaction, and that obviously can focus democracy, love, and well-being. And we are developing from the beginning of this year, and soon when it be public, the Place Institute as the way to do these global programs. As a recognized public charity in North America, and obviously capable of receiving US and international donations, and as focus on providing platforms that significantly impact communities worldwide by creating and developing these places. And it's part of best practices in designing and managing private and public places. And we deliver a strategic planning for obviously project funding, technical support, collaboration, best practices, and networks. In hands with the Social Life Project and PlacemakingX as our leading more than 5-10 years experience on only these cases. And how we will do it? Obviously, transcending functionality, nurturing relationships, building community as we have done, and then our strategy is focused on identifying and clearly seeking funding from global donors, and that's what I'm doing right now, aligning programs with donors, inviting global proposals then for people and communities for apply, and then really ensure transparent selection of beneficiaries to implement our strategies. Then we continue with all the resource allocation, the support and supervised project by us, and then the metrics and report and the continuous improvement. Everything developed by our learning from the last 10 years of experience. So this is where we are right now. I think it's a fantastic moment to start a global effort that has been done in many other places, but with my experience in Mexico and my experience in Latin America and the last 2 years with the global network, I think it's moment to really start creating these programs that we have been doing. And I really believe the only way to do it is through a network of, even if one of us or me want to do it alone, it's impossible. So we need everyone's hands on it to create these vibrant public spaces for everyone. So Luisa, I know questions, and what do you think?
Thank you very much, Guillermo. I think it was a really rich and very comprehensive presentation regarding all the different strategies, approaches, and also projects, implementation. I have one question for you before we wait for some question for the audience. And I think this has been also, I'm sure, part of your strategic thinking, because you explained how difficult it is to actually, get funded, create an implementation starting from an idea, conceptualizing, designing, having suppliers, stakeholders, stakeholders, people, communities. So this is really very difficult to manage and also could be overwhelming. But then finally, you, after several failures, succeed and you have this amazing public space. So then, and this is my question, how do you deal with the management of what you have created so that it can last as long as possible? Because we always have to deal with who is in charge, how the space can actually change throughout time. Sometimes it needs to be adapted, transformed. So there is always, a timeline that we have to consider when we implement these projects. And so this is called place management. And so it's not just about placemaking, but also about place management after you have completed, the action.
Yeah, I think it's a question of ownership, and it's a question of who owns the public space. And when we answer this question, then we can start raising answers to who's going to be in charge of it. So when we believe that the owner is a private company or the government, like in the US, for instance, or the government as in Europe, then the answer immediately turns to these actors to answer the who's gonna manage and sustain this. The reality of it is that interests and of ownership just finish when there is not enough profit or like a return of investment in terms of private companies and private owners of public spaces, or elections and and government structures around the public space. So for me, the answer to this is, and this is a matter of democracy and openness to our an ownership of our cities and of our world, to the people and to the communities around our neighborhoods. So when the ownership goes to the people that live there, and then there is the question is could take different strategies, and then it's about bringing people together and bringing people together into the public spaces that will take care of it. And obviously I'm not saying that should be one of, and I'm not against neither full government or full private or full ownership of the community. I think needs to be a balance of the three of them. So when they coexist together in a system of ownership with balances and with clear rules and clear determination on who owns what, then these questions can be answered better. So I believe it's and to shorten my question, I think it's everyone's responsibility. So it's us as people in our square in front of our house or in our neighborhood, but also understanding the structures happening in our global economy and in our and national and local governments on who owns and who can take care of things.
Yes, well, I think this also depends on how these different entities value the space, the transformation, the community engagement, and the social value, in particular, related to public space, because sometimes even the best intervention could actually disappear because there is not enough awareness on the value and possibilities, because every public space has a big potential that can be, expanded, unfolded, and we probably see this potential, but the problem is to convince others that the value that we see and the potential that we want to unfold is actually very important, and also a treasure that, as you said, the government, private entities, and the community should actually consider as their own value in the urban space.
And I remember this slide I show you from Peter Smith with the 5 different place capitals. Obviously, the physical capital it's outside. It's our weather. It's our world. So it's obviously it's declining every time our physical value of our public space, because they're in the outdoors, and then winter come, and then use come, and that's even great. Like when you have some benches and they are used, and they lose their physical value because they are very highly used, and now it's time to change them. I think that is fantastic. So we shouldn't be so scared of needity on how perfect everything should be in the public space, because it's basically physical value and the use. I'm even more worried when we have public space, and there's many cases of these public spaces that are not used, and that are just like they see like they're new. And this is where maybe the other elements of the capital are not considered. So where the social, the cultural, and the economic values of it are not there. So for me, it's the way of seeing this is in I'm writing about this is about where the decrease of the value happens by time, and then where the increase of the appropriation and the qualities of cultural, social, and economic value comes to the public space, and how can we find the intersection of these two, and the value can be seen as sustainable. So and this implies that we need to start actually our place social and capital, and cultural capital, economic capital, and environmental capital way before the physical capital applies. So this is why public participation and workshops, just putting a table, asking people, bringing them together, this it feels that it's because we want to make them part, but it's also because we want to make, and these places create more value at the end, because their time on the effort starts way before the physical action happened. So this is for me a really clear example on how public spaces, and the Foro Limberg as the first example we work, it now is a fantastic square, and people, we are not there anymore, and even the government is sometimes there cleaning and doing stuff, but it's the community itself is taking care of it. And this happens to many of our 500 different projects around the country. So it's about understanding that it's not public spaces is not only hardware. It's not only, it's like a compute, like, to solve a problem is not only having the best computer in the market, but it's also having the software, the tools inside the computer, and then the abilities, the hardware of the organization, this capacity of understanding and using the material. So I really believe a balance of the three is really key and important.
Yes, you're right. And partnerships are also very, very important. As you said, we are not alone, and we always need to create networks and common grounds to actually build those social values in the community that are also reflected in the public space. So now I want to invite Via to join, since I see some questions from the audience, but maybe you can tell us, Via, about the attendees of this lecture.
Yes, of course. I will squeeze in my little statistics. Just to let everybody know that we're very happy that we tested out launching this live stream also on Twitter, because we're having a great turnout today. So we'll definitely keep that going. And great attendance in general as well. We have around 60 up to 70 people watching. So seems to be a very exciting, interesting topic that people want to learn more about. And of course, me myself, I also very much enjoyed the lecture. It's so nice to see these wonderful pictures of public spaces and smiling, beautiful people. It's always very, very inspiring. And I think that, Guillermo, you touched upon a lot of very useful topics that, for urban designers like me, it's very useful to know down these lessons for actual implementation. I'll just remind everybody that this is the time that you can put your thoughts and comments and questions in the comments section on whichever platform you are, because we're monitoring all of them. And then I can start reading some of the questions. So the first one will be from our friend Nessia Strasbourg. Hi, Nessia. I'm glad to see that you're watching. So she says that, Guillermo, your lecture was very inspiring. And her question comes up on the same topic of partnerships, actually, between the private and public. And so she asks, who is your main partner within municipalities? Which municipal units do you actually manage to collaborate with on projects that are about communities and community-based projects?
So we all of our projects basically are done in land owned by government. So we always need to participate with them into one way or another. So um, we partner with the three levels of government. So we partner with the federal government in Mexico. So we have a partnership with the federal government, or to more strategic planning, and this allows us to then create the other agreements, because these federal agreements means a lot, but in practical terms means not much, because do not really finish in anything. But what it helps, it's unfolds the others and the other agreements we have with the we live in Mexico. We live in a federal state, so then with the other states we have each state is like, imagine its own country, have their own constitution, own government body and everything. So then we partner with this federal regional governments, and then we partner with the cities to implement the projects. But above all, and it's obviously we need to have these agreements ready and to apply. Above all, our big partnerships are with the community. So what we learn is that we need to go always hands in hand with the neighbors and people, and that will be the beneficiaries of the public spaces. Because if not, our all stream do not really work. We do this just to make and apply for doing things, but also it's time consuming, challenging, and really sometimes super annoying to do a lot of bureaucracy and then finally finishing nothing. So my big advice, I will only advise this to people in my country and in the US, and maybe in Europe, in some areas in Europe also, but just do it. Just do the changes by yourself. It's being a positive insurgent on things, and you are doing good things for your community. And try to follow rules, but do not be constrained onto these agreements just to apply things. I started as an activist doing the transformation for public space without actually asking. I asked, I say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know the regulations, but that's basically what I say then. So it's not really that important. And when people see it's community based and you have a group of neighbors who wants to do it, then it's more valuable. When you don't, is when it's more dangerous for us public space advocates and designers. When you bring just a plan, and it's even imagine the UN all down approves it, but the community and the neighbors who are there do not really want it, then it's when it's not really worth it. And so I really believe it needs to be both ways, grassroots as the key element, and not what, for example, us that we are in a more institutional way of working, we do have all those agreements. So what I say to people in Mexico, for instance, is that just do it. I do have a framework agreement that we can do stuff like this. So then you can join into that agreement and you can say it was us who did it, and that's fine. And I
Well,
bail, I bail anyone out from jail if something happened.
I think the question from Nesia was regarding the department unit. So, for example,
Yeah.
if you work with urban planning, mobility, environment, or if this is what you do, I mean, like these placemaking projects are actually projects that are working with all these different departments and that are engaging people from these different departments, because this is also one of the problems when you need to
Yes.
get the approval, of the municipality, that your request should go through all these different
Or the
departments.
approvals, no, in plural, because you
Yes,
just not need one, you need different approvals. So
exactly. Yes. This is also very stressful, no? And sometimes it takes a lot of time.
yeah, so it's the same answer, like the pyramid structure. So the highest you can get the agreement with, I think, is the strategically the most valuable, even if it's a spoken agreement, or like if the mayor or this institution creates the agreement, then everything will unfold into what you need to do, because there's always going to be a department that you forgot and you didn't consider, and it changed so much in regulations from one place to another. So there's obviously in Europe there's the European framework that defines everything, but it's still it's I can't imagine how complex it is in language and departments. So, but my advice will be go as high as you can, but also bring as grassroots as you can, so you can have both agreements, and then you can bring together those two elements.
Great, thank you. I hope, Nesia, that answered your question. So let's move on to another one. We have an interesting question from Minora Hafez, and she asks about cultural heritage. Do you feel that cultural heritage has place in placemaking efforts? And if so, how do you feel we could best optimize the use of heritage when placemaking?
Yeah, I think local identity and the value of our public spaces are key. I mean, for me, the farthest I traveled was to the middle of Russia, close to Kazan, and it was wonderful. But what I realized is that the parks look exactly identical, and the ones are were done in Brazil and in Mexico, and similar to the ones done in India. And then I realized that uh, everything was a copy paste design from one place to another. So it was wonderful, and I was very impressed of many places. But then I said, like, besides the weather, everything looks very similar. So it's really I mean, it's really good in the sense globalization has bring the possibility to getting the best of everywhere, anywhere, but also valuing the heritage of each place. It's important. Like we do have beautiful squares and markets in in Latin America, and then they are being lost by these huge shopping malls and boxes that do not respect what we do. So I really believe that we need to work together with what's here, what is there, what is being rooted, and also respect what people want. So I think there is a huge element of respect and value, and also, but also I believe on innovation and and the moment of creation of place by the people in real time in the first instance. So I think a balance of both, it's key to be unique and to create value, like comfort and image as one of the four elements of the wheel. It's good. Let me find it fast. There. But also the respect of one of the elements here in this one. Here, yeah, no, it's actually how to make things like respectful and valuable, and not everything look exactly the same. So yes, so I will advise you to go through the place diagram and review some of the attributions of comfort and image to realize that also we can measure heritage as a way of respect and not doing everything the same everywhere.
Great. Thank you for that answer. I will just like to finish off with a question of my own, if you don't mind. I'm kind of curious about your take on what we could call this current debate about what placemaking is. Do we know what it is, and do we care as long as it works? Because I feel like this topic is being brought up more and more about, since placemaking is becoming so popular, then the word becomes a buzzword, it becomes misappropriated. We're developing terms like place washing now, that is like the misappropriation of placemaking by maybe private corporations with some more income increasing goals rather than community building goals. Yeah, I was wondering, what is your take on this, and do you see this actually happening in practice, or is it more a risk that people are afraid of? And is there anything we should be taking care of and thinking about more?
The biggest take on placemaking I seen, and I was like shocked, was in a conference in, I think it was Vancouver, the International Downtown Association conference of 2 years ago. I was invited to be a keynote speaker there, and then I saw people calling placemaking basically a grab on a pole for marketing purposes. I was like, this is like, okay, this is. But in the other way, I think it's okay. Like there is not really it's not in the dictionary, and it's really so broad that people can define them by themselves. So this is, I think, what is makes it really unique, the term. I just for example, let me bring another example just to answer your question. Like for example, the term of gentrification. I really believe it's a. I mean, I studied for 20 years gentrification when I was in my master's degree, but then I realized that if it's really appropriate to use the term, uh, 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 global north term to apply to understand as a global south specific phenomenon happening in a heritage town in Mexico. In Mexico, it's an indigenous, and I really do not see that these global terms can really apply to everything if we take the framework as it is and say, well, maybe in England, Luisa will know better but when they say it was good, or maybe, but now for the Mexican environment, I'm really not sure. So the same, I think, happened with these big terms that are really applying to dictionaries. But what I love about placemaking is that it's the opposite. So it's as not well defined that it can really modifies to the local context very well. And that's why I see people in India, in Mexico, in Europe, in the US using it in very different ways, and sometimes some concerning ways. But I think that's fine because it actually creates the value of the term. Obviously, the term is divided into two words: the term place and term making. So it really applies this understanding of what is a place, and how to create places. And I think it's basically this understanding of Peter, of different elements of capital and in value terms on what to create a place of physical, cultural, economic, social, environmental, and political, but then obviously also the making part of it. So and I say it is more about doing than saying. So how can you do place, and that's easy, and if for someone is by grabbing paper into a bowl, okay, that's fine. That's fine for me. But for other, it's more a technical way of creating alliances between departments in different contexts, and it's a more structural planning process into the government system, and that's also okay. So I will not frame it into one. And and yes, I think it's a term not registered, so everyone can use it, and it's our goal to continue defining it and transforming it. And I like a lot the term place as a main frame word for everything, and just defining it well. And uh, I just had an amazing conversation with uh, uh, Karen Christensen, the editor from Ray Oldenburg book of Third Places, and basically like how Ray defined third place. I love the simplicity of the term, and then how Fred brings the making of it with, and Fred, Kathy, and Steve with the principles, the tools, and the elements. I think these two combines amazingly together. So this is my take on placemaking, and I invite you to see the movie. That's the movie. So that's how I understand what these guys say, Fred, Steve, and Kathy. But maybe others, if they read it, and maybe in 10 years will change. So this is the magic of words. So yeah, but, yeah.
Yes, and regarding this movie that you produced, maybe you can mention that it has been translated in so many languages.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fantastic work from the Global Placemaking Network. To be honest,
Mhm.
here's the slide, and it's been translated into 22 different languages by subtitles. Everything done by the network. So if anyone wants to this is a open source movie. It's like open for everyone. It's so if everyone wants to translate it to their own language, we have languages as diverse as Czech, Dutch, uh, uh, uh,
Italian.
Italian, of course, Thai, Mongolian, yeah, and obviously the big languages also like Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, English, French, but also really small ones. And this is only capable because of this amazing network. And I'm so happy and thankful for the hundreds of people that have been working for this. And you can watch it. It's very short. It's a 19-minute movie, shorter than any episode, and I try to condense everything, even shorter than this lecture. So
Yes, I was very lucky to actually see the preview in New York City last
yes,
year
thank you.
with
Yeah,
Fred, Ethan, and Katie, and I think also Steve was there.
it
So
was there. Yes, yes.
yes,
Well, thank
yes.
you. And that pre-premiere helped me like just modify some little spelling mistakes from my bad English. So that was perfect. So
Yes, no, it was really amazing and it was very well received. So I think it's something very valuable also for the community of placemakers to actually know how it started and the principles behind, just to answer to what Via was asking, to go back to the reasons why the Fred, Katie, and Steve, working with William White, started the Project for Public Spaces and how they then developed a whole theory around placemaking with then also so many tools and strategies and way in which translated a concept, a vision into an action. I think it's brilliant. And thank you, Guillermo, for making this movie because I really believe it's a very interesting. And then, as you said, it's very short, but it gives you exactly what you need to know regarding placemaking.
yeah, it took like everyone's like I'm not a filmmaker by far. I study urban studies, but what I think is that this term of doing things lighter, quicker,
Mm.
cheaper, and then just doing stuff and understanding that obviously I plan for it, but I plan as much as was needed to do what I wanted. So this is one of the principles of placemaking. So it's basically I said I want to do this. I want to do when my mind was clear that I needed to do a movie shorter than 20 minutes to get everyone's attention. Especially
Yes.
in our TikTok era, that our attention is very focused on short.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's about doing, and I feel so happy about it, and I invite all of you to see it after this. And yes, so happy of and helping you guys to do whatever project process you want to do. I'm really into changing things and modifying. And obviously we're going to launch this new institute for creating global programs in the hands with the PlacemakingX and the Social Life Project, and it's applying what we have learned in this decade of programs in North America and in Latin America to globally. So we're happy to take this step, and obviously with amazing programs that happen in Europe, for instance, like the Citizen Placemaking program, the Australian and New Zealand educational program, the Japanese government program that is also super successful around placemaking. So and the network in India that I'm so impressed on. I mean, obviously the amount of people, but the amount of amazing leaders that really focus on defining placemaking, but also on applying it into their context. So I think it's just fantastic where we are right now, and so happy to have this call exactly in this moment.
Thank you very much, Guillermo. I think we can close the lecture here. And thank you for those who have attended. Thank you, Via. I don't know if you want to say some closing words before we finish.
I can just thank you again, Guillermo. I really love your spirit of nothing will stop us, and we will just keep on going. It's what I love about practitioners. Always keep going. So yeah, thank you for this lecture. Very, very inspiring. Glad to have been a part of it.
Yes, and just to close, let me say something. You said at the beginning of your lecture that it is not about money. It is more about, having the willingness, the passion, and the ability to start something. And I would like to recall the words of Jamie Lerner, the well-known mayor of Curitiba, who was a brilliant and visionary urban designer and placemaker. He said that creativity starts when you cut 1 0 from the budget. So it is really very appropriate, I believe, with what you presented, Guillermo, because it is really related to the effort, the strength, the passion, and the commitment, dedication that these people around the world, placemakers, are actually putting into transformation of public space to improve quality of life of everyone living in cities.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Luisa. And I really think it's true. It's about transforming ourselves and allowing everyone to be able to transform themselves. And this is the right to the city. And if you are allowed to transform yourself, everyone is allowed to transform themselves, then we are transforming our city in the long term. So it's about us taking the action, the movement. It's about us. If we see something we don't like, we do it and we transform it. And to transform that is transforming yourself, and then you transform your city. And this do not really needs a lot of money. And yeah, definitely, money is not the issue. Definitely.
Okay, so we close with this. And okay, so we hope to have you back with us again during other activities that we are developing for the Public Space Academy. We have announced through our newsletter that we're starting a mentorship program soon after the summer. So maybe Guillermo will invite you. We will invite you to join us again in the future.
I will definitely will go to the summit with you in Italy, and then in Rotterdam with the Placemaking Week, and invite you everyone to connect with me in person in the events happening in this year in the US and in Europe. That I'm gonna be there with you obviously in your partner of the World Urban Forum in Cairo. I'm planning to be there, but also online. If you want to send me a Instagram message or LinkedIn message or email or whatever you want, I'm addicted to answer everything.
Okay, thanks a lot. And thank you for those who were listening, and see you in June for the next keynote lecture that will be announced soon through our newsletter and social media. Thank you again. Bye.